for example, is the both in terms of number and quality of the copies that we have of the New Testament. It is the most, by far, the most well-attested document of ancient history. And it's because it was considered so important by Christians that they preserved it. I'll give you an example. The ancient Latin writer Cicero, Marcus Tullius Cicero, who lived in the 1st century BC, right? The earliest manuscript that we have of one of his writings is the 10th century AD, right? So it's 11 centuries removed from the original. But most people, excuse me, accept that as reflecting the actual author, Marcus Tullius Cicero, because it was probably copied very accurately. And we can see in the different manuscripts where mistakes were made. But that's what textual criticism is. It puts it back together. In the New Testament, we have documents that are the first copy of the first copy. That is within 20 years maybe, of the original writings. About the church fathers, well, these things were circulated and were copied over and over and over again. So by collating all these different manuscripts, we can see what the original document was. And there's not very much variance, actually, in, for example, in the letters of Ignatius of Antioch, there's a standard text that people believe now. And if you give me just 1 second, I'll grab it on my
here. Oh, definitely. Take all the time you need, because
so the French scholars have done a great job on this. There's a thing in French called the Source Chrétien. It's Christian sources that was started by Henri de Lubac and Jean Danielou back in the 1940s. And it's now got 500 volumes. But this one is the one for Ignatius. It's the letters of Ignatius of Antioch and Polycarp of Smyrna. And so it's got the Greek text with a French translation. Now, the reason I bring that up is to say that there's very little doubt as to the authenticity of these letters. Now, we don't have the originals. We have copies of copies of copies, but they were accurately copied. Let me give you another example. What modern people don't realize is this. People that have, thumb drives and computers to remember things. But you see, they didn't have that in the ancient world. So you know what they did have? They had incredible memories. Oh my, those people could memorize. And they could say it word for word. We've lost the art of memory.
We sure have.
Memory, by the way, is the door, the window into meditation and understanding. But anyway, they had that. Now, to give you another example, now this is not the Apostolic Fathers, but this is how ancient people worked and thought. Before the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls in 1948, I think it was, before the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, the earliest manuscripts that we had of some parts of the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, were from the 8th or 9th century AD. So if Isaiah wrote Isaiah in the 7th century BC, and the earliest manuscripts that we had were in the 9th century AD, that's 16 centuries from the original. And if you use this general thing, about, they can't, there was such a great distance. When we found the Dead Sea Scrolls, they compared them, and the Dead Sea Scrolls date as early as the 2nd century BC. So they jumped back 11 centuries. And you know what the agreement was between the documents we had from the 9th century AD and the 2nd century BC? It was like 90% the same.
Wow. That really is incredible.
And that shows that these people felt it a religious duty to copy the manuscripts accurately and carefully, you see.
And great point that you bring up there, because the incredible kind of theology that we find, Trinitarian theology, theology of Christ as our incarnate God and Savior, it is important because as we recognize the apostolic fathers, very important to the ante-Nicene, the Nicene fathers, the medieval church, and what have you, they would have been very careful to meticulously copy them. That is a fantastic example of the kind of pedigree we have, that we can trust the words that we actually have in them, which really, in my opinion, is really amazing.
Well, we don't have any many documents about the earliest period of the church about copying, but when they started monasteries, we do have ideas about that. And we know from Benedictine monasteries, which was the largest in the West,
Yeah.
from Benedictine monasteries, that the monks were admonished very carefully and harshly, even to say, you make sure that when you're copying this manuscript, that you do it to the letter, get it exactly right, you see. So they felt a duty before God and their fellow monks to make sure that the copying was right. I liken it to getting a glitch out of a some code that in a software program, right? If you got the wrong syntax in there, the thing is not going to work, right? So even though it's not it's not mechanical. Copying a manuscript wasn't mechanical like that. Nevertheless, they had the same attention to detail as you would have to the syntax in, say, C, C++, or some programming language, you see.
That
So,
is incredible, really incredible.